Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. So, over the past 24 hours, we have seen another strike by Ukrainian forces on the Kerch Strait Bridge. This time, the strike appears to have been a subsurface strike or surface strike by a Ukrainian surface drone system. Now, let's look at that capability and let's look at the challenges that the Ukrainians would have in terms of reaching the Kerch Strait Bridge. Now, obviously, the Ukrainians are not launching these systems from the Sea of Azov. The Russians are fully in control of all ports and facilities that could launch vessels along the Sea of Azov. So, in all probability, the Ukrainians are launching these systems from a Ukrainian port, possibly near Odessa or someplace near Odessa. We also cannot eliminate the possibility that these ships are being launched from a NATO partner, possibly Bulgaria, possibly Romania. You cannot eliminate that. Obviously, the Russians are keeping a very close eye on what comes out of Odessa and these Ukrainian areas along the Black Sea. And if you look at the distance running from Odessa to the Kerch Strait Bridge, you're looking at well over 700 kilometers. So an incredible distance to launch a drone or drone-like surface or subsurface vehicle to the Kerch Strait Bridge. Now, are these even surface systems, or are they actually subsurface systems? I want to have a look next at the systems the Ukrainians could be using in these attacks on the Kerch Strait Bridge. So here we have three different Ukrainian surface and subsurface drone systems displayed. The first is the first generation drone that appeared in 2022. And then you have the second generation maritime attack drone that appeared in 2023. Obviously, its acoustic and radar signature is greatly reduced with the second generation, and the technology has obviously increased, in all probability, with the help of DARPA and other organizations relating to the United States and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And then finally, the actual system that was involved in the attack is the Tolika, TLK-150 Maritime Attack Subsurface Drone. And essentially what you have is a very large torpedo with a navigation system and the ability to go for very long range, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. Now, we haven't actually seen this system yet. Obviously, this is a very classified system, and this is a diagram of what that system could in fact look like. And in all probability, the Ukrainians are getting every assistance from U.S. subsurface warfare experts in terms of the manufacturing, deployment, and even establishing the communications relay to these drones. Wouldn't surprise me at all that if in fact that these systems were actually launched from a NATO partner. Meaning, who is that? Bulgaria, Romania, possibly again. But again, you have to understand the Russians are watching these areas very closely in terms of what could come out of the port of Odessa or near Odessa or any naval facility or secret facility that the Ukrainians have along its what remains of its Black Sea coast. So again, would not surprise me at all if we find out that in the years to come that the United States and NATO were much more involved in the deployment and the assistance of these systems against Russian targets, especially the Kerch Strait Bridge. So again, very interesting that the Ukrainians were able to strike again at the Kerch Strait Bridge. It does not appear that the bridge was entirely destroyed. It does look like it was some sort of surface or subsurface explosion that caused a partial collapse, and then the railway portion of the Kerch Strait Bridge is still operational as far as we know. But if you look at that explosion and that detonation, in all probability, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for the Russians to quickly repair than some of those aerial strikes that we have seen in the past. So again, we'll have to also look at what is going to be the Russian response. Undoubtedly, there is going to be a Russian response to this attack on the Kerch Strait Bridge. Undoubtedly. Now, what's going on in the continued war? Well, in the south, running from Zaporizhzhia east to Volhodar, the Ukrainian offensive has essentially stopped. The Ukrainians are now completely avoiding battalion-level maneuver groups with heavy equipment such as tanks and armored fighting vehicles that have been supplied by the West. Those are the Leopard 2 main battle tanks, the Bradley armored fighting vehicles, the Strykers, other systems, Challenger 2s, M1A1 Abrams. We haven't seen any of those involved in actual combat as of yet. We've only seen the Leopard 2s and the Bradleys thus far. But in that initial operation by the Ukrainians, which involved some 6 to 12 Ukrainian combat brigades, the Ukrainians have taken anywhere from 20% to upwards to 35% casualties in equipment. And that has led to a change in tactics and strategy by the Ukrainian military, especially here in the south. So no longer are they seeking large maneuver formations and the capture of large areas of territory. They are now using small infantry formations, small platoon and company-sized elements of infantry to move forward and try and identify these Russian forward observation posts and defensive areas to then call in HIMARS strikes against Russian forces. So right now, again, it's the Ukrainians are attempting to identify, target, and then destroy Russian forward operating groups, and then possibly look to renew larger offensive operations with its brigade sets. But again, right now, it's just small infantry formations, probing the Russian lines, and then calling in these HIMARS strikes. The offensive, the multiple brigade offensive that was designed to seize territory has failed, and we're not seeing it anymore. Additionally, in the north, with the hotly contested city of Bakhmut, fighting continues, but the Russians have counterattacked both to the north and to the south of Bakhmut. And the Ukrainians are continuing to probe and attack near Bakhmut. But again, I think at this point the Ukrainians have written off the idea that they are going to envelop and then attack Bakhmut and seize Bakhmut, retake Bakhmut from the Russians. Probably not going to happen for some time, if ever, as we continue to watch what is happening on the ground. But heavy fighting continues, albeit we are not seeing large brigade maneuver formations by the Ukrainians because of the appalling casualties the Ukrainians have taken in their large maneuver element operations against Russian forces. The Russians were very prepared for this Ukrainian offensive and have successfully defeated the Ukrainian counteroffensive. And now we're seeing, again, these probing attacks and these probing operations with light infantry formations and wheeled vehicle formations against the Russian lines, but not a concerted effort to break through Russian lines at this point. That capability has been eroded, especially in the south. We're just not seeing it. And it looks like the Ukrainians are very weary of this multi-layered Russian defensive area in the south, running from Zaporizhzhia to Volodar. In addition, obviously, the Ukrainians are very concerned about the Russian fixed-wing capability, about the attack helicopters and the Russian ability to use fixed-wing aircraft against Ukrainian forces in some of these very, very open fields. And as I've talked about before, and I imagine some folks are tiring of me saying it, it is going to be very difficult for the Ukrainians to achieve initiative without an air force, while Russia possesses an air force that can attack Ukrainian forces. So that's kind of where we set for today. We will continue to monitor. We will continue to report. Thank you for joining us. More to come very, very soon. And as always, have a good day.